Some of the most notorious movies ever made in Germany are now illegal to show in public, even decades after World War II. Today I'm going to be talking about the Nazi films that were banned or buried by the German government. We've got a propaganda blockbuster loved by Hitler Youth, a U-boat epic with a real admiral on screen, and the most infamous propaganda movie in history. This one's a Nazi propaganda film, and it's all about the Luftwaffe's dive bombers focusing on a squadron of pilots. Two subplots really stand out here. There's the bit where 3 pilots get shot down but just walk their way back through enemy lines. They even managed to talk an entire French unit into surrendering. Total propaganda fantasy. Then there's the Heinz story. A pilot who gets shell-shocked, loses his nerve, and his treatment is to go listen to Wagner. They actually have a scene where this guy hears the Siegfried's Rhine journey and suddenly snaps back to being a fearless Nazi flyer. The propaganda ministry loved it. No surprise there. The film got 4 official distinctions for its political and artistic value. Goebbels made a big deal about how this proved Nazi filmmakers could beat Hollywood at its own game. With time, the film of course became notorious for its propaganda and for some of the most misguided scenes ever filmed. That Wagner opera sequence? Critics later called it one of the silliest pieces of misguided propaganda ever conceived. After 1945, the Allies banned it immediately, and the cast and crew wanted nothing to do with it. Karl Ritter, the director, skipped the country and spent years defending his movies as orders from above. And here's a detail that shows just how strange real life and propaganda overlapped. One of the film's young pilots, Hans Stelzer, was also a real-life Luftwaffe pilot. He died in action in 1944. This next one is another pure propaganda film, this time a tribute to Germany's U-boat crews. It's about one such crew on a mission to hunt Allied ships in the Atlantic. The crew inspects a Dutch merchant ship and treats everyone correctly. Propaganda 101. Then they get attacked by a British warship but outsmart and sink it. And of course Germans are shown as professional and honorable, and the British come off as sneaky and weak. At the time, this movie played great to German audiences. The Battle of the Atlantic was still in the news, so the propaganda ministry pushed it as one of the year's top war films. There was a novelty too. Admiral Karl Dönitz, the real head of the U-boat fleet, appears as himself. The production even shot scenes on a real U-boat, U-123. Of course, this was never meant for audiences outside Germany and the Axis countries. Allied authorities destroyed any copies they found. After the war, it was completely banned. Modern Germany still keeps it locked away as a restricted film. You can only see it with historical commentary and educational settings. This one is a post-war West German film, and it takes a completely different approach. Here the focus is the Battle of Stalingrad, but instead of glorifying heroics, the film actually shows ordinary German soldiers as victims of Hitler's fanaticism. The director, Frank Witzbar, had fought in the war himself, so that gave the film extra weight and realism. The story follows Lieutenant Wiese, a young and loyal officer who gets assigned to a Romanian unit at Stalingrad in late 1942. What he witnesses is disaster after disaster. Stretched lines, Soviet encirclement, chaos in command, and higher-ups refusing to allow retreat. Over time, Wiese starts to realize he's been abandoned. He goes from believer to bitter skeptic, and by the end, he's just another prisoner in a Soviet camp. The message is pretty direct. The soldiers were betrayed. The war was pointless. This was one of the very few 1950s films in Germany to really tackle the trauma of Stalingrad. It packed theaters in West Germany, won a state film prize, and landed 6th in box office admissions for 1959. But outside Germany, the reaction was mixed. Sweden banned it for being too militaristic and diplomatically sensitive. In Eastern Bloc countries in the Soviet Union, there was no chance of release. The film's sympathetic look at Wehrmacht soldiers clashed too hard with official communist narratives. The Bridge stands as one of the most important German anti-war films ever made. It tells the story of 7 teenage boys drafted in the final days of the war. They get sent to defend a small-town bridge with almost zero training. All the while, they're clinging to the belief that even defending 1 square meter is vital. What unfolds is completely tragic. The boys take their assignment seriously, fight American tanks, and are killed off one by one. By the end, only one survives. The film closes with a title card explaining that this real event in April 1945 was so unimportant that it was never mentioned in any war communique. The Bridge was a breakthrough. First big German anti-war film after World War II, a major international hit. It picked up an Oscar nomination for Best Foreign Language Film, won the Golden Globe in that category, and critics praised it for how deeply it captured the waste of war. Director Bernard Wicki, who had been briefly imprisoned by the Nazis as a teen, cast actual teenagers for authenticity. The impact reached far beyond Germany. Portugal's authoritarian regime banned it in the early 1960s because of its anti-authoritarian message and pacifism. The Devil's General is a post-war West German drama set during 1941, built loosely around the story of Luftwaffe General Ernst Udet. Kurt Jürgens stars as General Horace, a legendary fighter ace who becomes a charismatic Luftwaffe leader in the Nazi era. The thing that stands out about Horace, he openly despises Nazi ideology. He mocks Hitler's regime right to its face, even as he continues to serve in the military. It's only a matter of time before the Gestapo starts suspecting him of treason. As the pressure mounts, especially after a friend faces execution for sabotaging aircraft, Harris confronts his own moral line. The Devil's General became a hit in West Germany. By the end of 1955, it ranked among the year's top-grossing films, and it turned Kurt Jürgens into an international star. He'd go on to appear in James Bond's The Spy Who Loved Me. He actually brought extra weight to the role. In real life, the Nazis had detained him in 1944 for speaking out. Younger and left-leaning German viewers saw the movie as resistance on film. But in East Germany, communist officials banned it. They wanted stories about proletarian resistance, not aristocratic officers. The Great Love stands as Nazi Germany's biggest wartime movie. It's a romantic drama with patriotic messaging. Swedish singer Zara Leander plays Hannah Holberg, a celebrity performer who falls for Luftwaffe officer during World War II. Their romance hits all the obstacles you'd expect. He keeps getting sent off to the front lines, first North Africa, then Russia, so the wedding keeps getting postponed. Meanwhile, Hannah entertains the troops and civilians, singing optimistic songs. When it premiered in Berlin in June 1942, The Great Love broke records. Over 18 million tickets sold, the Third Reich's most commercially successful film. Joseph Goebbels loved it and used it as a model for uplifting entertainment that could help Germans cope with the stresses of war. The Allies, of course, blocked it right on the spot. After the war, Allied authorities immediately banned The Great Love in Germany as part of denazification. Even though it didn't contain explicit anti-Semitism or militarism, its propaganda was still clear. This one came out just months after Hitler took power and stands as one of the earliest full-length Nazi propaganda movies. It's based on a real story. Herbert Norkus, a working-class Berlin kid who became a Hitler Youth martyr. In the film, a teenage boy grows up in a communist household. Despite his father's opposition, even physical abuse, the boy tries to join Hitler Youth and eventually earns his place by warning them about a planned communist attack. In the end, communist agitators ambush and fatally wound him. The film basically makes him a martyr, glorifies youthful sacrifice for the Nazi cause. Goebbels himself celebrated it as a groundbreaking Nazi film, calling it a full-fledged success thanks to the tools of modern cinema. What's wild is that the movie even premiered in the US in 1934, retitled Our Flag Leads Us Forward. But after war, the Allies in Germany banned it outright. Surviving prints were seized, and West German authorities kept it locked away for decades. Even today, showing it in public in Germany remains illegal without special permission. Leni Riefenstahl's Triumph of the Will is still to this day the most famous piece of propaganda ever put on film. Commissioned by Hitler, released in 1935, it documents the 1934 Nuremberg Nazi Party rally in all its scale. There's Hitler's grand arrival by plane, shot to make it look like he's coming down from the clouds. There are endless parades, banners, speeches, and the hypnotic visuals of thousands marching in step. There's no narration, just visuals and music. Riefenstahl uses every cinematic trick available: moving cameras, sweeping aerials, dramatic close-ups, and bold editing. If we are talking about technical level alone, Triumph of the Will set the gold standard for political documentaries. Basically, they invented a style that would be copied for decades, for better or worse. Critics at the time and since have called it one of the most powerful and effective propaganda films ever made. It even won a top prize at Venice Film Festival. During the war, Allied filmmakers actually studied the movie to figure out how Nazi messaging worked. Frank Capra, the guy who made Why We Fight, ended up using footage from Triumph of the Will to show American troops what they were up against. After 1945, the Allies banned the movie in Germany, and that ban never really went away. To this day, you can't show Triumph of the Will in public in Germany or a lot of other countries.